This one is live.
Okay.
Internet. Internet connection lost. Push to talk. Dimmed. Push to talk. Dimmed.
جزاكم الله خير. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن ينفعنا بما علمتنا وأنتما بما ينفعنا وزدنا علما نافع رزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا يا ربنا لك الحمد ولك الملك بيدك كل شيء وإنك على كل شيء قدير. أما بعد. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us what's beneficial and to benefit us by what we learn. Increase us in knowledge, wholesome provision, give us actions that He accepts subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask you, to you, O our Lord, is the praise. To you belongs the dominion, and in your hands is everything. We ask you for your help and your mercy. Ameen. This is the sixth sitting with the famous book, Ad-Daw wad-Dawa'i. لمن سأل عن شفاء شافي. One of the famous book of Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, The Sicknesses and Its Cure. For the one who asks a question about treatments that work, remedies that heal. I want to take some more benefit from the section of the Sheikh's book, Al-Atharu wa Ta'thiru ala al-qalbi al-aquba wa ta'thir والأثر المعاصي على القلب. The ill effects, the great dangers, the harms of sin, and the punishments of sin upon the heart and the soul of the person. We mentioned the narration of Abi Darda. The narration that comes in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. Abi Darda mentioned given an-nasiha in his statements, and those statements that both Allah mentioned the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in his life, and we have them in the Quran as a result of that, and in the authentic Sunnah. From amongst them, Abi Darda, he said, اعبدوا الله كأنكم. He's talking plural. اعبدوا الله كأنكم يرونه. Worship Allah. Obey Allah. Follow the commandments of Allah. Stay away from the prohibitions of Allah, as if you see Him. وَعُدْ أَنفُسِكُمْ فِي الْمَوْتَى. And remind yourself often, think about often, advise yourself often, reflect often, visit the grave of the people who are there in the graves often, remind yourself of death often. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ قَلِيلًا يُغْنِيكُمْ خَيْرًا مِنْ كَثِيرٍ يُهْلِيكُمْ. So know, for a surety, if you have been given a little bit of something, and you find contentment and satisfaction in what Allah has given you, is better than if you amass a lot of things and you're not content, you're not grateful, and it destroys you. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْبِرَّ لَا يَبْلَى أَنَّ الْبِرَّ لَا يَبْلَى. And know that good deeds, righteous deeds, don't vanish. They stay with you, and the results of them stay with you in this life and in the hereafter. And the grave, they stay with you. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will see them. وَأَنَّ الْإِثْمَ لَا يُنْسَى. And the sins that we forget, Allah don't forget them. The sins, disobedience, things that we do that causes the punishment, that causes the anguish, that causes the depression, that stands between us and many things of goodness, Allah Azza wa Jal don't forget while we forget. This was the narration of Abi Darda, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So we want to go back and take a look at the issue of ماذا الوحشة. الوحشة يعني حاجز, when a person has something preventing them. As this chapter, Shaikh al-Imam ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya mentioned Hirman, يعني al-ilm, Hirman al-rizq, that which prevents a person from knowledge, and that which prevents a person from getting the things that Allah will normally bless them with, that they need, is the sins. So the Shaykh is talking in context of that, and he's talking about wahsha, having something between you, making you a loner, making you stay away from not only people, not only the righteous, but stay away from Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So the Shaykh says, وَمِنْهَا means from the عقوبة them على العبد, from the punishments because of sin on the individual. Now, awaqib al-dhanub, as Shaykh al-Razak mentions, awaqib al-dhanub, the punishments because of sin, the noob. The noob is plural for them, and awaqib is plural for aquba, sins, and their punishments. He said, from amongst the likes of them, وحشة يجدها عاصي في قلبه بينه وبين الله. He said, from amongst the types of punishments due to sin is that the person will find يعني وحشي يجده يعني في قلبه some type of barrier between him. This is the meaning of wahshi. في قلبه, it's in its heart. Preventing, being between بينه وبين Allah, standing between him and Allah. So This is one of the first aspects of results, consequences, and punishments of sin. That sin will stand between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Shaikh, he said, La tuwazinuha. Nothing can compare to this. Because when a person is disobeying Allah, you don't compare the pleasures and the disobedience to the value of being able to submit, devote, obey, repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They think light of the latter, and that thing which is pleasurable, this is what they think the most of. So the Shaykh, he said, يعني لا توازنها. You can't compare the two. There's no trade-off. ولا تقارنها. And you can't put that and match it with anything. You can't match what? You can't compare what? The ability to devote yourself, the ability to submit freely, the ability to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus not being able to because of sins. Although you have all of those things that bring you a temporal pleasure. The Shaykh said, يعني, there's no comparison. يعني, مهما كان يعني لحظة. No matter what the pleasure is, there's no comparison. Shaykh al-Razaki says, well, al-Asi, the sinner, إذا كان يجد, if he can find في المعاصي التي يعني if he could find يعني if that person could find in the يعني delightful things, that he's afraid that if he doesn't have them, he won't be happy, he won't be able to make it. If he can find them, those things, if he can find any type of pleasure in those things, the Shaykh said, they're temporal. They don't stay. He said, لكن من عواقبها من عواقبها, but from the punishments of the sin, that person will incline towards what is prohibited clearly, what is that which will earn the displeasure of Allah, what is that which is harmful to him. He will find in his heart وحشة بينه وبين Allah. He will find that that thing will stand between him and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. SubhanAllah. Although the delight and the pleasure is temporal, that won't suffice him because it will stand between him and his ability to devote himself, submit himself to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. He said, so the Shaykh, he said, the اللحظة بحاصلها يعني في المعاصي لن تقارن. So you can't compare, you can't measure that temporal pleasure that the person finds through disobeying Allah with the happiness of those sins. Temporal happiness, you can't compare the real happiness, the everlasting happiness, if that person is able to devote and submit themselves to Allah. But the sins stand in the way. That's the punishment. The sins will keep you from that real pleasure, that real happiness versus the temporal, the fake happiness of those things that you amass in disobedience to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala versus being able to submit to Allah. devote to Allah, to obey Allah, to turn to Allah, which the sins prevent the person كرمان يعني وحشة بين العبد وبين Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They infringe, they stand between the person and his Lord. Sins. Now, for this reason, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, he made a profound statement to show you that those pleasures don't mean anything versus what it would mean if Allah Azza wa Jal gave you tawfiq, gave us the success to not sin and to be able to devote ourselves to Him. There's no comparison. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya wanted to make that point clear. He said, "Lo ijtama'a al-ladhata dunya kullaha." He said if a person was able to لو اجتمع له لذات الدنيا بحسبها. He said, if a person was able to amass every delight in this dunya that he could find, that he would imagine that is a delightful thing. And we're talking again, sinful things, haram things. As well as the things that are halal. Anything that makes you feel good. But the context here is talking about sinful things. Because there's no punishment for amassing things that have a delight that's halal. It's the haram. So we want to amass all of the haram things that a person can say, this is fun, this makes me happy, I like this is nice, this takes my mind away from this, oh, this makes me feel confident, oh, this, makes me strive, this one, it encourages me, all of those haram things. So it's tama'a, ladhat, يعني لو استمع له لذات الدنيا بحسبها. The Shaikh said, أَيُّ خَيْرٍ فِي لَذَّاتِ الدُّنْيَا. Any good that comes from delightful things of this dunya. He said, إِذَا كَانَ تُفْقِدْ, if that thing is going to make you lose. تجلب للعبد يعني الوحشة بينه وبين الله سبحانه وتعالى. He said that there's no comparison. He said, فَيُصْبِحُ الْقَلْبَ مَاذَا مُسْتَوْشِحْ. Yeah. Mustawhish. Mustawhish means there's a block between your heart and your Lord. Serious issue. So this, issue is very serious, because when you talk about this issue, when you think about the people that become to themselves, when the people, they isolate themselves, when you think about people that suffer from severe depression, this is one of the things that people overlook. It's because of somebody's sins, something that a person did. And there could be some cases where people become very severely depressed because of others, but we're talking about things that we do that cause this. And a lot of times it's because of something we did. Even if someone else is involved, sometimes we have accountability, we have a fault, we have some sins that we did, because if not, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would protect us by default from those evil people. Somewhere, somehow, that person left the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They did something that they seen was small, minute. It's not a big deal. That's part of how we bring ourselves we bring the punishment upon ourselves from the issues of disobedience, sin, deliberate disobedience. Now, so this first point, the Shaikh, you mentioned وحشي يعني بين العبد وبين الله سبحانه وتعالى يعني حاجز, something between you and Allah. And you think person tries to get it right. We have many examples. Person's trying to pray, person's trying to fast, person's trying to leave certain sins, person is trying to barakallahu fikum, be upright, steadfast, but they find themselves gravitating over and over back to those old ways. They find themselves hitting and missing with regards to doing what's right, up and down. And when they're talking about Iman, it's up and down. Your Iman can be up and down, and you still have a connection. You still may be able to devote yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's different levels and degrees of devotion. But this person is finding it hard to leave sin. This person is finding it hard to be engrossed, to be Allah musta'an, focused on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to do and wants them to stay away from. So this we find many times. And this, one of them, when the person can't do that, it's because of the sins. They can't make tawbah, it's because of the sins. They've been doing something for a long time. They can't leave it. It's because of the barrier between them and Allah, because of particular sins, and sometimes because of multiple sins. Then the Shaykh, he mentioned that this is in opposition to the believer. The believer, the righteous person. And we're not talking about believer, I'm a Muslim, and the non-believer is a kafir. We're talking about believer in theory and practicality. Like a person, I'm Muslim, but I'm not deening. That's not a believer. They're a Muslim, but they're not a mu'min, because they're not doing the righteous deeds. But the mu'min, he has accepted Islam, and he's doing the righteous deeds. He's doing what's of obligation upon him. He or she is leaving the haram. This is the one that now the Shaykh is talking about. He said, but the mu'min, and that person, iqbal ala Allah, that person is able to commit himself. Iqbal means to devote, commit, give himself over, surrender himself over. This is the one that's staying away from the sins. This is the one that has those blessings not taken away from him because of the obedience. As a result of his good deeds, as a result of her good deeds. Contrary to this example, the one who is not being upright, is not obeying the law, then that person, although he may be a Muslim, is not considered a believer at that time. So that one has a block between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know this from many ahadith and ayat in the Quran, where Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala يميز بين المؤمن والكافر والمنافق. Allah distinguishes between the believer, the disbeliever, and the munafiq. The munafiq, again, Muslim dhahir. Outwardly he professed Islam. But, wallahu musta'an, hajis, bainahu wa bain Allah. It is a barrier between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He can't devote himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, because of his sins of hypocrisy, his sins of al-bish or khiyana, being deceptive, trying to trick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they believe. Now, how do they try to trick Allah? By displaying one thing, but in their heart having something else. How do they try to deceive the believers? By praying, fasting, and being amongst us, it's all we know. For what we can see, he's a Muslim. But in his heart, something else. So this is the same thing, and in wahsha, baynahu wa bayna Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a block between him, a barrier between that person and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala because of his sins, as opposed to the people of righteousness, the believers, those people who avoid the major sins. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told with regards to those people, قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. Now, in Surah Al-Hujurat. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet to correct those group of Arabs that said we believe. They'll say we have submitted. We have generally accepted that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is your Lord, none should be worshipped except Him, and the Prophet is His messenger. But you have not made it to being a mu'min. You have not made it to the second level in which we're talking about, because that takes righteous deeds along with staying away from the sins, the new now. Also the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hadith of the Bukhari Muslim, where the Prophet talked about لا يسني زاني حينما يسني وهو مؤمن ولا يسرق سارق حينما يسرق وهو مؤمن. Now, it said, and the person who's making fornication and adultery, likewise the one who's stealing, taking something that's not his or hers at the time when they're committing the act of thievery, theft, stealing, while they're doing that, he's not a mu'min. And the scholars differ on the meaning of he's not a mu'min. Some of them say, يعني ماذا his iman rafa'a fawqa ratsihi. His iman is lifted above his head. His iman is lifted above his head. Now, and that while he's doing the act, he's in a state of being a disbeliever. If he was to die like that, Allahu musta'an, then he may be punished like a disbeliever. Others said who are Muslim, yani asi. He's a Muslim sinning and not a mu'min. He's at the first level when he's stealing. He's at the first level when he's making illegal intercourse, just a Muslim, not a mu'min. And that is what is the meaning here when the Shaikh is talking about the person who يعني وحشة the wahsha baynahu wa bayna Allah, he can't devote himself to Allah because of the sin. Although he may have submitted, like Allah mentioned the ayah, he's not devoting himself to Allah. He is not committing himself to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Now, so the mu'min qalbuhu muqbilun ala Allah. His heart is devoted, attached to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And that attachment, that relationship, that connection, by Allah's permission, by Allah's mercy, by Allah's rahmah, because of Allah's generosity and guidance to you, if you follow it and you obey Allah. If you follow it and you do the commanded acts, if you follow it and you flee from the prohibited acts, then the connection between you and Allah, the devotion between you and Allah strengthens. And it saves you from punishment. It saves you from akhubat al-dunub. But when a person disobeys Allah, as the Prophet said, إِذَا أَثْنَبَ إذا أثب ذنبا نقطة سوداء. Now, نقطة سوداء. Now, when the person does a sin, then that person gets a black spot a mark, smudge on his heart. And the Prophet said, when zada, zada. When zada, zada. And if he increases in sin, the marks increase. The marks increase. So this is very important to understand. When we talk about Iqbal ala Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, being devoted to Allah Jalla wa Ala, being able to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being able to worship Allah and find lahdat al-ibadah, qurrat ta'ayyun, finding delight in worshiping Allah, not being a person who was malan fi ibadati, he becomes bored with his worship, a'adillah, because of sin, disobedience, uqubat, ad-dunub, صار حاجز ووحشة بين العبد وبين الله سبحانه وتعالى, because of the sin, the ill effects. We hear it all the time. ومن سيئات أعمالنا نعم ومن سيئات أعمالنا عقوبة الذنوب. From the evil of sins is the punishment of sin. One of them, the obstacle, that which will stand between you and Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Istahnis bi ta'atillah, that person finds an affection with regards to obeying Allah. He becomes in love with obeying Allah Azza wa Jal. Now, then the Shaikh, he mentioned the second point of having a barrier between you because of your sin. بينك وبين الصالحين. نعم بينك وبين الصالحين ومجالستهم. It will be a void between you and the righteous people in their gatherings. And we find many times, if it's people who are sinners, people who are bad people, people who are negative as it relates to obeying and disobeying, people who gravitate towards all of the things, or most of the things that have shubuhat, misconceptions, or most of the things that or clearly haram, or they gravitate towards the things that are gray. Then if you find a person easily going with them, befriending them, enjoying their company, this is because of sin. Know that they're alike in nature, those people. As they say, birds of a feather flock together. Now, a janan, yata'atifan. Now, the wings, the souls, ruh, kal, جنانان الروح نعم جنانان, that the souls they come together, like things that fly, the souls intertwine. The Prophet mentioned that if you are a person upon obedience to Allah, person who's not liking the sin, you'll find it easy to gel and to merge and gravitate and to deal with people and be around people like that. But if the person is the opposite, that person he is in this category of those who are receiving punishment because of their sin, then you won't be able to mix. You won't be able to hang. Even if it's like for a short period of time, you'll be able to tell that's not comfortable for you to be with that person not really comfortable being around you. They might need you for a ride here, something there, something here. But after that, khalas. They can't come and sit with you tomorrow, eat, pray, talk deen, this, that, be involved in halal things. They're going to get bored. Why? Because there's a hajis, there's wahsha, baynaka wa bayna salihin. There's a barrier between you and the righteous people because of sin. And a barrier between you or majalisatihim and their sittings. Now, Allah puts that. You can't. They won't allow you. I got to go. But if it's some nonsense, music, laughing, this, that, joking, movies, moreover, there's some, if you drink, there's drinks there. Beer, you drink beer, beer's there. Wine, you drink wine, wine's there. Reefer, you smoke reefer's there. Cocaine, you snort coke, whatever's there to toot your horn, you can stay. You can stay all day into the next morning, subhanAllah. Never find a problem, never get bored. But as soon as there's a sitting and people righteousness, you can't sit that long. I got to go. I got something to do. You start yawning. I'm tired. I got to go home and rest. I got to. It's the barrier between that person and the righteous people. It's the barrier between that person and their gatherings, their sittings, their functions, their company that's keeping him from them and their company. Not just he has to go. And likewise, the Shaikh said, you'll find the more that person, the sinner, the more they increase in sin, Bawda, men Allah, wa Bawda men, Ahlul, Salihin, wa Majalisatihim. The more that person increases in sin, the more remote that person who's increasing in sin becomes to Allah. The more you sin, the more distant you become from Allah. The more distant you come from Allah, you also become more distant away from the righteous people in the gaps. The more you increase in sin, the more you pull back from Allah. Can you imagine you pull back from Allah? You can't pray. You can't cry to Him. You can't do the righteous deed. You can't read, study, listen Quran. You can't make dua. Anything regarding your hereafter is difficult for you. Even you have the intention, you make wudu, you can sit back down. An hour passed, 2 hours passed, you didn't pray. But you had intention, you wouldn't have made wudu. But it's difficult. I don't know why I couldn't. I was going to pray, but and then you get distracted. Maybe it's because this issue we're talking about. Maybe it's because of the ill effect of sins. Maybe it's because of the wahsha baynaka wa bayn Allah, wa wahsha bayna ab wa bayna as-salihin majalisihim. The more you increase, as the Prophet said, when zad. If you increase in the bad deeds, the black spots increase on your heart. If you increase in the bad deeds, the punishment increases that which makes you more remote. And then lastly, the Shaikh mentioned in the Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he said, so this person that becomes so remote, subhanAllah, imagine, you don't want to be around nobody. You can't pray, you can't worship, you just drowning in your misery, your depression. You don't want to see nobody, you don't want to be around nobody. It's hard for you. You're not going to play and read Quran. You just, sobbing in your sin. That person, that person, they can't see, what they may need to do. They can't even take the steps because of the barriers between them and Allah, the barriers between them and the righteous people. So they go further until the heart is locked. The heart's closed. But Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala still left hope, and that is if the person taba and makes tawbah, goes back to doing righteous deeds, they leave the sins, and they seek Allah's forgiveness on a regular basis, then that heart starts to heal. Those marks start to leave. Those barriers become broken, and that person will fix himself. And lastly, as the Shaikh, he said, Shaykh al-Razak, he said, one of the problems with regards to these sins in these days and time, which people do when they forget, which people they do sins, and they think because there's no immediate punishment, there's no consequence. It's like a person who has a jarh, has a wound, and that person, the wound heals, but they didn't clean the wound properly. So underneath the skin is the wound that you think is good. Why? Because nothing as a result of the wound happened. You don't see any obvious pain or any obvious difficulty. You just had a wound. So you think I'm good. Underneath the skin, the damage is starting to build up. Just like somebody can get poisoned and not die right away. It takes time. So after some time, now the initial problem, because it was not cleaned, it became worse inside. So that person now has alam ashad min al-asl. He has more pain, more difficulty down the line than the initial injury. He said this is the same thing with sin. People think because, nothing happened. I did it. I did it the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and no consequence. He said, but that's Allah. He will punish you right away. Or ta'akhar, akuba. He delays it. It could be 5 years from now, something you did, you get paid. 10 years from now, something you happened to you, you did wrong, you get paid. It could be 20 years. It could be all the way to Yom Al-Qiyamah. But don't think that because of this delaying and what you obviously see as an effect of the sin, there's no consequence and there is no effect of sin. No. So the Shaikh, he said, Shaykh Razak in closing, he said, one of the things that gets black spots and damage on the heart of the people this day, he said, the internet and these cell phones. He said particularly the one that they call the key or the cat, the smartphone. Remember, you had the phone before, you just call with it. You place your call, you talk with people, you get your help, you hang up. But now they came out with Jawal Yani Dhaka, Jawal Dhaki, the smartphone. It can do this, it can do that, it's intelligent. The Shaykh, he said, الذكاء بدون زكاة يؤدي إلى البلاء. He said, intellect, have an intellect. Even we can transfer this over to people. I have a PhD. You have a master's. She has 2 masters. I'm intelligent. I'm not stupid. I'm educated. But how many of those people you find that don't have tazkiyah? They don't have tazkiyat al-nufus. They don't have the cleaning of the heart, the cleaning of the deeds, the cleaning of the mind and the soul. So their intellect benefits them not. Rather, it's a punishment further against them, as the Shaykh is saying. That person who has the know-how, the intellect, and smarts without being cleaned and pure from sin only leads you to more destruction. Only leads you to more calamity. Allahu musta'an. الذكاء بدون زكاة يؤدي إلى البلاء. نعم. Allahu musta'an. So this is one of the ill effects of sins, something that people forget. It stands between you and Allah. It stands between you and the righteous people, the sittings, and it also is that, as the Shaykh said, Hirman and the ilm, it prevents you from knowledge, or the Hirman and risk, it prevents you from the provisions that Allah Azza wa Jalla has for you. As Imam Shafi'i, he said, Shekautu ila al-Waqi', he said, I complained to my Shaykh Waqi' su hifdi, my bad memory, wa arshadani ila and وأرشدني إلى ترك المعاصي. So he directed me to leave off all sins. فقال لي إن العلم نور من الله ولا يؤتي نوره إلى العاصي, because knowledge is the light of Allah and He does not give His light to the sinner. And Imam Malik told Imam Shafi'i, ولا تؤفيه بظلمة ظلمة ماذا معاصي. Don't put out the light of Allah. His light that He gave you is knowledge. Don't extinguish it with the darkness of sin. And the risk, as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala said, مَنْ يَتَقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. Allah will give you from where you can't imagine. He will provide for you. This is because of taqwa. And Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, he says, therefore, if taqwa will bring about risk, taraka taqwa, yani jalaba al-faqr. Then leaving taqwa will bring about poverty. If taqwa is the thing that will bring you, yani, and don't think of risk as $2 million. No, anything that you need, any provision, money, food, health, resources, transportation, righteous children, righteous wives, all of this is considered risk, anything you can benefit from. So here, if taqwa brings that to you, then leaving taqwa takes that away. And likewise, Allah said, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهِ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ فِي مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah will make in his affairs easy, the opposite. تِلْكَ التَّقْوَى يعني مُجْلِبُ لِلْتَعْصِيرِ. It brings about difficulty. If taqwa will bring about barakallahu fikum, yani ease, then leaving the taqwa will bring about that difficulty, hardship. How many times you try to do something and this door is shut, and this door is shut, and that door is closed? Say, man, everything I do, there's a failure. Everything I try, I just can't succeed. Yeah, because you left the taqwa. And how many people, maybe they don't have the best job, maybe they don't know all of the people, maybe they don't even have the best looks and all of those things that people think they need to get what they have to have in this life. But he has what Allah has given him, and he suffices with that. And you say, wow, that guy always have some money, but he don't work that much, or he doesn't make that much. How does he get this and that? Allah put barakah in his provision. Allah made his difficulties easy because he didn't leave the taqwa. And when you leave the taqwa, حرمان العلم, it prevents you from knowledge. حرمان الرزق, it prevents you from things that you need. Allah will give it. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help and safety. I want to bring more clarity. And lastly, as Yunus said, Sahib al-Hut, Yunus, he said, man, he said, alaihis salaam, he said, لا this is إذا حدث كذا وإذا قال من قال الله سبحان الله من قال الله في السر هتك الله أروته في علانية. من قال الله في السر. Whoever khan here means you betray the trust. Man khan Allah fi sir. Whoever betrays the trust of Allah, betrays Allah in secret, hatak Allahu urwatahu alaniyatan. Then Allah will expose and remove the cover of that person publicly. So you don't obey Allah in secret. You think you get another. Why? Because in public you act. If you do this in private, you do that in private, you won't come and do that in front of the people. Why? Because you want to fool Allah, like, no, I'm upright. See, I'm with the people, I'm doing this. But in private, you're like that. So, Yunus, he said, man, khan Allah fi sir. Whoever breaks his trust, like the Prophet said, yani, ayatul munafiq, yani, thalatha. إذا حدث كذب, when he speaks he lies. وإذا تؤمن خان, when he's been given something to do, he doesn't do it. Now, قال الله في السر. Allah told you, تقي الله.
Allah Azza wa Jalla told you, وَلَا تُشْرِكْ بِهِ شَيْءٍ. Don't follow your desires to the point that your desires is like your Lord and you're a slave. You do anything that you want. It's a shnum and a shirk. Shirk of ta'ah, the shirk of obedience. You obey your nafs. Allah told you don't do it. Allah Azza wa Jalla told you to fear Him. Obey Him. Sirran wa alaniyatan. You're in secret, you do whatever. You're in public, you act like you're upright. من خان الله في السر حتى الله أغرته علانية في علانية then Allah will make and show you to be like that in the eyes of the people. Your true colors. The opposite. من يتق الله في السر ماذا حفظ عليه في علانية. Whoever fears Allah in secret, Allah will preserve him in the public. So this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us, give us حسن الخلق, حسن المعاملات بينه وبين أنفسنا وبين الناس. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rectify us, as Abi Darda said in conclusion, أعبد الله كأنكم ترونه. You all worship Allah like you see Him, as the Prophet said. Act like you see Allah. وعد أنفسكم في الموتى, and remind yourself of death much. واعلم أن قليلا يهنيك أن قليلا يغنيكم خيرا من كثير يهليكم. And know that contentment with a little bit is better than a lot that will destroy you. واعلم أن البر لا يبلى, and their righteous deeds are not in vain. They won't disappear. They'll be with you in this life, in the grave, and the hereafter. وأن إثم لا ينسى, and sins you may forget, but Allah doesn't forget. Allah musta'an. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد. Hey Siri. Hey Siri, stop.
It's finished. Yeah.
Again.
Again?
Yeah, give it again. Are you giving it to me to do?
No,
Twice.